In the years that followed Dr. Adler's disappearance, the facility remained abandoned, hidden deep within the tangled forests of Eastern Europe. The surrounding towns, long shrouded in superstition and dread, quietly erased the memories of the horrors that had unfolded. The facility had become a ghost story, a whispered legend. But legends have a way of resurfacing, especially when the hunger of the past refuses to remain buried. One evening, a group of urban explorers, thrill-seekers with a taste for danger, found themselves standing at the rusted gates of the forgotten research center. The fog clung to the ground like a low blanket, and the moonlight barely broke through the dense canopy of trees. The explorers, 2 men and 2 women, equipped with cameras and flashlights, had heard rumors of strange happenings in the area, lights in the sky, whispers carried on the wind, and tales of missing hikers who had wandered too close to the manor. The story of Dr. Adler and his experiments had become nothing more than a curiosity to them, a way to break the monotony of their mundane lives. But what they did not know was that some things in the world are better left untouched. Some places are cursed for a reason. They pushed open the gate, the old iron hinges creaking like the sound of bones being twisted. They laughed nervously, the sound echoing through the empty night. They walked toward the looming structure, their footsteps crunching on the brittle ground beneath them. The air grew colder with every step, a chill that seemed to creep into their very bones. Not exactly a 5-star hotel. One of the men, Greg, joked as he shone his flashlight across the crumbling exterior. His voice was shaky, but he tried to sound confident. The others chuckled, but their eyes darted uneasily from shadow to shadow, unsure if the nervous energy was coming from the surroundings or from the ghostly tales that had been passed down through the generations. The door, once grand, had fallen off its hinges. It hung loosely in the frame, a crooked reminder of the power the place had once wielded. As they stepped inside, their flashlights illuminated the walls, revealing dark stains and the remnants of something far more sinister than mere decay. The smell of mold and rot was overpowering, but beneath it was something else, something metallic, almost like blood. They continued down the hall, the air thickening with each step. The temperature seemed to drop even further, and an eerie silence filled the space. It was as if the entire house was holding its breath, waiting for them to make the wrong move. And then, the first strange thing happened. One of the women, Alice, gasped and stumbled backward. Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice a whisper. The group paused, their faces tense as they listened. There was a faint sound, like the dragging of feet across the floor. The sound came from deeper within the building, from the direction of the old laboratory. They stood frozen, but curiosity got the best of them, and Greg was the first to speak. "Probably just an animal. We're in the middle of nowhere, after all." But Alice wasn't convinced. She looked around, her eyes wide with dread. It sounded like footsteps, too slow, too deliberate. They stood there in the dark, the sound growing louder. It was as though someone, or something, was moving through the halls with them, stalking their every step. The dragging grew closer, and soon, they could hear the unmistakable scrape of metal against stone. Without a word, the group began to move again, the tension in the air palpable. As they approached the old research labs, they noticed a strange light flickering in the distance. The source was faint, but it seemed to beckon them forward. When they finally reached the laboratory door, it swung open on its own with a low groan, revealing a room bathed in dim, flickering light. The walls were lined with old, rusted equipment, machines designed for unknown purposes, some of them dripping with liquid that had long since turned black and foul. In the center of the room was an old operating table, the leather straps still intact, though stained with the passage of time. The explorers stepped forward cautiously, their flashlights trembling in their hands. It was then that they saw the first signs of something unnatural. On the far wall, a series of portraits hung crookedly, paintings of men and women with distorted faces, their features twisted in agony. But it was not the faces that made their blood run cold. It was the eyes. The eyes were alive. They moved. Alice screamed and backed away, her flashlight spinning wildly, illuminating something else in the corner of the room. Something human, but not quite. A figure hunched in the shadows, its face a grotesque mass of scars and twisted tissue. It was too tall, too thin, and its body was contorted in unnatural ways, the skin stretched over bone like a corpse that had been reanimated by something darker than death itself. Its eyes were black, pools of emptiness, and as the light hit it, the thing jerked its head toward them, its mouth opening wide to reveal rows of needle-like teeth. The group froze in horror. Alice's scream echoed through the halls as the creature shambled forward, its limbs bending at odd angles. Its breath was ragged, like something trying desperately to hold on to life, or what was left of it. The others turned to run, but it was already too late. The thing lunged, its fingers long and twisted, reaching for them with a speed that no human should have possessed. Greg managed to shove Alice out of the way, but the creature's claws raked across his back, tearing through flesh and bone. He let out a strangled cry, but it was drowned out by the sound of something far worse, a whisper. It was the voice of Dr. Adler. "Join us, forever." The voice rang in their minds, pulling them in. The others stumbled, unable to break free, as though the very air had turned into chains, binding them to the nightmare that had long outlasted the physical world. The creature's mouth opened wider, wider still, until it seemed to swallow the very light in the room. And then, in a moment of sickening clarity, they understood. The experiments had never ended. The creatures, Carl and the others, had never been freed. They had only been waiting for new blood to fuel the horrors that Dr. Adler had unleashed so long ago. Their souls were twisted, bound forever to the facility, to the serum that had promised immortality but delivered only suffering. The explorers tried to fight, to scream, but the air grew heavier, the walls closing in, and their bodies slowly began to twist, their forms elongating, their skin stretching. The last thing they heard was a chorus of whispers, the voices of the lost souls that had been trapped here for eternity. "Join us, forever." The facility stood silent once more, its doors closing behind them as the fog rolled back over the land. The town, once again, was left to forget. But the manor wasn't empty. It never had been.